Hello, and welcome to the Nonfiction Kidlit Craft Conversations podcast, where we take a deep dive into the craft and business of children's nonfiction, featuring new release authors. I'm your host, Kirsten Larson, author of Reimagining Your Nonfiction Picture Book, and today I am talking with the Sibert Award-winning author and environmentalist Patricia Newman about connecting with teachers and librarians through conferences. Patty's latest book is Sharks Unhooked, The Adventures of Christina Zanato, Underwater Ranger, illustrated by Becca Hall from Millbrook Press. Welcome to the show, Patty.
Oh, it's so great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Welcome. Well, tell us about yourself and your books.
Wow, how long do you have?
I know. How many do you have at this point?
Okay, so I don't know how many books I have. Kids always ask me that question, and I always forget to keep the count current. I always say it's something like 26 or 27. Who am I and what do I write? It took me a while to figure out. I wrote a couple of picture books early on in my career that were super fun to write, Jingle the Brass and Nugget on the Flight Deck, but then I had this, and I did a lot of work for hire, but then I had this sort of revelation one morning at breakfast. I was eating my bowl of cereal. I opened up the newspaper, and there was an article about scientists sailing into the Pacific to study the plastic problem. And I said to myself, whoa, I didn't even know there was a plastic problem. What is this all about? And the more I read, the more I realized that this could very easily become a book for children. Dove down that research rabbit hole, and it became Plastic Ahoy. And I've never looked back from environmental books from that point.
Yeah,
I found my niche.
yeah, you did. Well, and now you have Sharks. You write a lot of middle grade,
I
but
do.
you do have Sharks Unhooked, which is a picture book. Do you have a copy you can hold up for our
I
audience,
do.
our
I
YouTube
do. I
audience?
do. Here is Sharks Unhooked. It's about Christina Zanato, who is an Italian diver who currently lives in the Bahamas. She has developed a special relationship with sharks in the Bahamas. She sees the same ones over and over again, and of course, some different ones. But she's also dived with all different kinds of sharks. The sharks she sees primarily are Caribbean reef sharks, but she's dived with mako and tiger and great white and bull sharks, all different kinds of sharks. But she decided that she needed to help sharks because they were approaching her with hooks in their fins and their gills and their mouths and their bodies. Do sharks have lips? I don't know. I don't think so. But in the lip area, let's say. And I happened upon a video one day when I should have been researching for another book, mind you. Um, I happened upon this video where Christina sticks her arm in a shark's mouth to remove a hook deep in its throat. And I was hooked. I knew I had to find out more about her because this was a fantastic story. So it's her story about being brave enough to follow her dream and being assertive enough to save her shark friends.
Well, and I mean, what there are so many kids that love shark books, right?
Yeah,
So, what an amazing story. And this is definitely a book that kids are going to love. Um,
I hope so.
Oh, I know they will. I've read it. It's fabulous. You have such a plethora of experience. I have seen you at conferences, I think at the American Library Association last year.
Uh-huh.
Um, and we presented together, I think for ILA and some other things. So I really think of you as sort of the conference maven, right? The conference presentation maven.
Okay.
You're a pro at this. And so that's why I really wanted to talk to you a little bit about conferences, especially how they might be valuable for writers. So, first of all, what is the value for writers, for us, to go and present at these conferences and to rub elbows with teachers and librarians? Why should we be there?
First of all, teachers and librarians are really cool people. I used to be a teacher, so I feel some companionship with them, although I'm no longer a classroom teacher. I used to be one. writing for children is not only about the books. It's about developing relationships. And whether I'm at a school visiting students or at a conference speaking with educators, I am focusing on sharing something that I think is cool and developing a relationship. You know, maybe somebody's going to pick up my book and read it, which would be great. Maybe somebody's going to share it with a colleague or a friend. Maybe somebody's going to invite me to their school. But I and on a more and on a more selfish level, conferences have always been for me places of energy and enthusiasm and ideas. And as a writer who attends an educator conference, maybe I'm not getting the same sort of professional information that an educator would get, but I am getting their energy and enthusiasm and ideas and their love of what they are doing and sharing literature and serving kids and helping them to become readers. And I just love that vibe at a conference. It's very exciting. I come back from a conference fulfilled in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, and I would agree. And I think also, as writers for children, sometimes we can connect directly with our readers, but there's a lot of gatekeepers in
There
books for
are.
kids, and teachers and librarians are two of those gatekeepers. So understanding their world, the environment they're working in, trends shaping their industries, I think is really helpful for us too, as we try to reach them and the kids that, whose lives they touch every day. So I think
There-
it's really valuable.
There's another benefit too. In the post-pandemic age, editors are not necessarily working in their offices all the time. So my agent reports that it's going to New York and having a slew of appointments with editors is not necessarily the best way to conduct business anymore. But a lot of editors are attending these conferences, and my agent attends these conferences. It's a chance for me to regroup with my agent. It's a chance to have breakfast with an editor. It's a chance to bump into an editor we've just submitted something to. So, on a professional writing level as well, it's more personal contact that we writers don't necessarily get because the world is different now post pandemic.
Right. Well, and that's an excellent point. I mean, I think when I was at the National Council of Teachers of English conference in Boston, I was amazed. I was absolutely amazed at how many editors were there. And part of that, for those who haven't been to these conferences, part of that is because at a lot of these big conferences, the publishers are in the exhibit halls and they have booths where they are showing off their upcoming and popular titles, and they are talking, so editors are there staffing the booths along with the marketing staff and talking to teachers and librarians directly, so they're there. And so now it's also an opportunity for us to connect with them as authors. So I think you're exactly right.
Right, right. You know, they meet with their authors that are there. They're usually publisher dinners at the bigger conferences. And it's just, again, it's all about relationships, whether you're trying to meet teachers and librarians or whether you're trying to keep up with the publishing people in your lives.
Right.
It's all about relationships.
Yeah, I agree. Hey, nonfiction Kidlit creators, want to go beyond the podcast? Join Reimagine Insiders. It's the creative community for children's nonfiction writers ready to level up their craft and career. You'll get insider craft sessions, behind the scenes peeks at my process, first dibs on classes, and a supportive crew who get what you're doing. Visit writers.kirstenwlarson.com to learn more and join us. And so, for those who haven't been to these conferences before, What are some of the most valuable conferences, in your opinion, including any hidden gems beyond the big conferences that authors might want to think about? Because obviously, going to some of these big conferences can get quite expensive.
Yes, it is quite expensive. I'm lucky in that I always get some help from my publisher. Not fully paid help, but help, which is much appreciated and much needed. Sort of the holy grail of conferences, I guess, is ALA, the American Library Association. I think when you go to ALA, you're sort of like a fish swimming, and you're schooling in different places, and it is entirely overwhelming. The exhibit hall is acres and acres and acres of space. There are signings and podcast interviews and Kidlit TV interviews and you name it going on in the exhibit hall. Plus, it's just a fun place to wander around. At any given hour during the conference, there might be 10 to 15, maybe more sessions going on. So there is a lot of choice if you want to go and listen to any of the sessions. But as a presenter, that means there's also a lot of choice for the attendees, and you may or may not get the attendance that you desire. At the San Diego conference, where you and I were together, we had a fabulous audience of 100 or more in the room, and that was wonderful. But at ALA, TLA, which is the Texas Library Association Conference, and NCTE, which is the National Council of Teachers of English Conference. Those are probably the three biggest that I've attended, and it's almost required that you submit a proposal that also includes an educator or a librarian, or for ALA it would be a librarian. For NCTE it would probably be an educator or a college professor. Authors don't usually, I mean, I could be wrong, maybe other people have had success, but authors on their own, just as a panel, don't usually have the same sway as a panel proposed with, say, an author and a teacher and a librarian.
Well, to that point, I think because part of this is continuing education
Correct.
for the librarians or for the English teachers. And
Yes.
so it's not as
It's
an
not a
author.
commercial for your books.
Exactly. As an author, you're not just coming in talking about your book, you're having to link your book and either your writing process, your research process, something that's going to be meaty and educational for teachers and librarians and give them something they can take back and
Right.
use in their workplace.
Yes, exactly. You are adding value. And after I wrote my first two, three, four books, I'm not sure I could have added value at that time. It has taken a while to figure out how to sort of coalesce everything that I've learned, how that kind of experience, the experience I've had with school visits, into cogent presentations that are of interest to educators and librarians.
Well, and so let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, what are the sorts of things that make a proposal attractive when we're sending it in? I mean, obviously there has to be some kind of take home value. And normally you're
Right.
asked about, what are the takeaways for the audience?
Yes, yes,
Uh,
you're often asked to fill that in the proposal document. Um, I think probably one of the biggest pluses you could add to any conference proposal is collaboration. Um, so it's not just you standing up there talking, it's you in concert with an educator, a librarian. The one that we did at ALA, as I'll use that as an example, it was called Kids Love Nonfiction. And I had contacted one of the judges on my Sibert committee and asked her if she wanted to propose something for ALA. And she said, Yeah, that would be great. And let me bring in um, my friend who's currently a lecturer, a university lecturer, but she used to be a school librarian. So we had a college university professor, we had a former librarian turned lecturer, and we had a Sibert Honor author. And that was an attractive mix for ALA. And we had a kind of a six-part presentation. We each presented two parts, and we talked about how reading nonfiction develops children's background knowledge and vocabulary. We talked about the five kinds of nonfiction. We talked about ways that librarians could point out the five kinds of nonfiction and collaborate with classroom teachers to help sort of recommend nonfiction as part of students' regular reading material. So it was this whole big confluence of research, practical experience, and literature that we brought together. I don't know that I could have done that on my own. I mean, you need these other people with these different perspectives, which is great. Another presentation, I haven't given it yet. It's coming up for NCTE, but an author friend of mine, Jessica Stremmer, and I wrote a blog post for School Library Journal's Teen Librarian Toolbox. And it was called Getting Big Issue Narrative Nonfiction into the Hands of Teens and Tweens. And we proposed that as a session for NCTE, but we brought in two reading specialists, one from UNLV and one from, I think, University of Utah, and NCTE accepted that. So again, it's going to be this collaboration of the detailed know-how from classroom experts and teaching experts and author experience.
Yeah, and I think normally most of the proposals I've seen, you're looking at least three, four, five people
Right.
as part of the proposal. Yeah, and I think the other thing to keep in mind is with these big conferences, they not only do they change cities every year, right? So hopefully they'll come to a city near you sometime, but also they change theme every year. And so when you're crafting your proposal, you have to think about how does this concept that I'm developing fit in with what the theme is, and these normally they have like different strands or different areas, and you have to kind of figure out where your proposal fits. So that's always a challenge too. Do you have any tips for tips for I mean, I sit there, like, I look, it's and sometimes these themes, they're really kind of esoteric. So I'm jotting down like keywords a lot of times and thinking. I almost start with titles sometimes, thinking about, keywords and buzzwords and what are words from the theme that, kind of resonate. And I kind of create these word clouds and think about, okay, what can I do with this? It's kind of a challenge.
The themes are the themes, the NCTE theme for this coming year, 2025, is Dream Boldly. So that seemed an easy one to,
Sure.
to slide into. I just completed my proposal. I clicked send right before our interview here for the upcoming TLA conference in 2026, Texas Library Association. And the theme was, community collaboration, libraries as hubs, things like that. And so again, it seemed to fit better into what I was planning to talk about anyway. But again, you have to address the theme. It also helps if you are attending one of the bigger conferences like ALA, TLA, NCTE, that you quote some research. And that's where these professors and educators are amazingly helpful, because I don't keep in touch with, current educational research, but they do. So it just helps give your proposal another level of,
You have some
hey,
authority. Yeah, you
yeah,
have some
authority.
authority.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and is there anything else? I mean, you've shared quite a few tips, but is there anything else that you think is kind of like the secret to your success? Because you seem to do quite well with
Oh,
these
I get
proposals.
rejected too. I get rejected too. And it's the rejections that sort of help you figure out what you can do better next time. I think what you need to do is, well, first of all, here's sort of like a very practical tip. ALA is coming up as we record this podcast. It'll be in just a few more days for June 2025. By the time ALA is over, within a couple of weeks, the proposal process for ALA 2026 will open. And your proposal is due, if I'm remembering correctly, something like September. So that these conferences work far in advance. As you think about whether or not you want to do this, keep your eyes open about what is something that you could talk about. Who are the people that you know that would, and not just writers, but teachers? Maybe you're a writer who is also a teacher. God, that gives you double authority right there. So start planning ahead and developing some contacts and finding people who might be interested in proposing with you. And they have to be sort of like-minded people because you want these presentations are usually 50, 45, 50 minutes, maybe 60 minutes long. That's a very little amount of time for three or four presenters. So, like children's writing, you have to focus. And again, that's why I say it helps to have like-minded people where you can sort of spin off each other and add value to what each other is saying.
Want to write a nonfiction picture book, but don't know where to start? Check out my self paced online course, Crafting Your Nonfiction Picture Book, designed just for beginners. In 4 weeks, I'll guide you from story spark to first draft with short, actionable lessons that fit into your busy schedule. You'll learn how to research, structure, and write nonfiction stories that kids and editors will love. Grab your free preview at writers.kirstenwlarson.com and take the first step toward your nonfiction picture book today. Yeah. And sometimes the depending on the conference, some of there are different formats, right? So when I was in Boston for NCTE in the fall, one of the formats was a roundtable. And essentially they had the presenters were parked at different tables and teachers after 7 or 8 minutes, shifted tables to get information from the author. So that's another thing to keep in mind when you're crafting your presentation is sometimes it is a presentation and sometimes there are other formats like a round table where it's a little bit more informal and you're chatting with a group
Right.
on a specific topic.
I applied, that's totally right. And I want to mention, I applied to AASL, the American Association of School Libraries. I think their conference is every other year, if I'm not mistaken. But when you apply to that conference, you just kind of tell them who you are, tell them what you can speak about, and you put yourself in a pool and they create the panels. And oftentimes those panels have school librarians who are moderators. So that's a completely different format, and it winds up being more like a conversation rather than a planned presentation with slides. And that's another thing I wanted to mention. In my presentations, I'm an avid PowerPoint user. I've tried to teach myself some of the more advanced features to give my slides a little more pizzazz as I'm looking at them. But I don't only rely on PowerPoint. A lot of people, if you go to presentations, a lot of times you'll see exactly what the presenter is saying written on the slide. I don't do that. They have to listen to me and look at the visual to get the whole package. And oftentimes I will bring an activity, some science related activity, since I write science books. I will bring some science related activity, and I will never forget at one, I think it was TLA, I was doing a demonstration on what exactly is ocean acidification, and I had it all lined up in front of me, and I was holding stuff up. And the librarians leapt out of their chairs and surrounded me like little kids at a birthday party, and I was the one opening the presents. It was such a good feeling. They are dying for something new at these conferences. They want to be engaged, they want to be wowed, they want to be, you know, excited about what you're presenting. So help them be excited.
Well, and it's wonderful that you bring that up. I had Ann Kofsky on a while back, and we were talking about school visits.
Hmm.
And, whether you're crafting a presentation for educators or school visits, you have to kind of tell a story, right? There's kind of a beginning, middle, and end. There has to be it has to be kind of emotional and exciting and hands on if you can make it, right? Because often we're talking about, this is kind of an opportunity maybe to showcase what you could do in a school visit in case a teacher or
Exactly.
librarian wanted to invite you. So you want to wow them with your presentation. You want to show them hands on and
Right.
exciting.
Right.
Um, Plus, who wants to sit in, big ballrooms all day staring at PowerPoints?
Right, exactly. They're sort of half lit, and sometimes you're far away and you're squinting at the slides, and the slides should be a an addition to what you're saying. They shouldn't be all of what you're saying. Because I do a lot of photo illustrated books, I'm lucky enough to have access to amazing underwater photos, elephant photos, rhino photos, you name it. I've got photos, sea otter photos. And I try to wow people with the visual, and which will engage them as I'm talking. I also make use of QR codes a lot. I don't often share my slides because they're my work product, but I do offer QR codes, and I always make a like a folder in the cloud that educators can go to and download the lessons and the lists and the other resources that I create as part of this session. And that's another thing when you do these sessions, assuming your proposal is accepted, you have to provide something for them to walk away with. And it used to be that, I would provide the paper resources, but then I realized, Patty, this is crazy. You're writing about the environment.
Right.
A QR,
Save the trees, Patty,
save
save
the
the trees.
trees, save the trees, save the litter, save the librarian some cost in terms of sending stuff home, because there's actually, in these big conferences, there is actually a post office where they can mail home books and material to themselves. I provide a QR code with links, with a link to a folder that has all the things in it that they need to bring these activities, these ideas, these concepts that I've been talking about back to their classrooms.
Well, and I've also seen you ask people if they want to get signed up to your newsletter mailing list. This is also an opportunity to see if people want to hear from you
Right,
beyond the conference.
right, right. I use MailChimp. I tag people, I add them to my mailing list, I tag them where I met them, and I contact them maybe a couple of times a month with news.
Right. Yeah. So this is another way to kind of, you talked about this as building relationships, right? So
Hmm.
this is a way
Hmm.
that you nurture and you expand that relationship
Right,
beyond
right.
conference.
Right. I've recently started a Earth Day Everyday newsletter where I have one section that's just something I'm thinking about to do with the environment, something that's in the news, headlines about the environment without getting too political, and a way to use that headline in the classroom using my books. So, and that's pretty popular right now. People seem to be like that. I also occasionally include a picture of my dog. No, I always include a picture of my dog, but I occasionally include a picture of my granddaughter. So, or travels or something. But, keep it light and personal, but also, again, always think about add value.
Right.
These people are busy. They are overloaded with standards and tests and parent meetings, and they're leading the blue crew or the green team or whatever it is they're doing on their campuses. They want help, and they will look for help in lots of different ways. So be the help.
Right. Yeah. Earn that spot in their email box, right?
Yes,
They're
exactly.
probably all inundated with 1,000 emails too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So going back to something you mentioned earlier, these conferences can be quite expensive. There's normally a registration fee. So, a lot of times for the educators, for the librarians, their institution may be covering these fees.
Sure.
Um, if you don't have a publisher to cover yours, you're going to have to pay for that. There's travel involved. So, you mentioned that you do ask for help. So,
Mhm.
as authors, what type of help can we reasonably ask for? Who should we be asking for help?
I work quite closely with the publicity team at my publishers. I'm always sending them, when Sharks Unhooked came out, for instance, or when Giant Rays of Hope came out, for instance, I send them the educator guide that I developed. I send them a list of things that I did publicity wise for that book. I tell them in advance that I'm applying to conferences, and I tell them if I've been accepted to conferences. So they put me on their schedule right away. Usually, if you have, and I should preface this by saying these trips are definitely marketing and publicity for me. And I don't apply to them every single year. I try to time my applications with books that are coming out. So, a book that's coming out in April, like Sharks Unhooked, an April conference would be great. A March conference would be great. Summer at ALA would be great. I didn't apply to ALA because I had applied last year in San Diego. I live in Sacramento, and this year's is all the way in Philadelphia.
Right.
So I thought, ugh, enough. Um, but I try to time these applications and conferences with when I have books coming out. And the reason for that is publishers will often opt to give you a signing in the exhibit hall right after your session and further increasing your visibility. And it's just, I mean, a signing is just a feel good thing. Who doesn't want to sign a bunch
Right.
of books to a bunch of appreciative librarians and teachers, right? I mean, they're so marvelous. They wait in these long lines for us to sign and chat, and, they're just so happy to take a picture of us. I mean, who knew, right?
You're a
I
rock
love
star.
it. But, you know, these conferences are my marketing budget. That's how I view them. Every business has a marketing budget, and this is my marketing budget. This is where I can feel like I can do the most good. Yeah, I'm also on social media. Yeah, I also have a blog, but those those are not personal interactions. As a writer, I need personal interaction too because I'm often alone. So these conferences are my professional personal interaction. They are my marketing budget. So I might attend one a year, two a year. I attended one in Sacramento last year. It was the California Association of Science Educators, a smaller conference, but definitely up my wheelhouse, definitely my people, and it went great. And that didn't cost me any. It did cost me to register for the conference, which the smaller conferences is not too bad. You want to get your publisher support, though, if you're going to a larger conference, because you do have to register for the conference as a presenter, which for these larger conferences can sometimes be up around $500. But if your publisher is exhibiting at that conference, they can also slip you in under their exhibitor badge. So they will carry your registration fee. I usually get a stipend because my publishers are so very generous. It doesn't cover all my travel, but again, it's my marketing budget, and I try to pick conferences that are an easy flight from Sacramento.
Right.
So you have to be kind of strategic. Like NCTE this year, I have three proposals that were accepted, which is fabulous. But NCTE is in Denver.
Right.
Super easy to get a flight from Sacramento to Denver.
Yeah. Well, and I want to tease out a few different things. So, you talk about this as your marketing budget. So, as authors, this is a tax deductible expense.
Yes.
This sort of marketing and travel to do these presentations, these are tax deductible expenses for us, the portions that we are not having covered.
Mhm.
And it doesn't hurt to ask, right? Like you should always ask. Normally getting the registration covered is the easiest thing. If you have a book coming out, ask that publisher. They'll put you in with their badge and ask, you can ask for a travel stipend. It may or may not happen, but it doesn't hurt to
I
ask.
know it, I've been in this business quite a while now, and one of my friends said we're going to make bracelets that say, "What would Patty do?" Because I am always pick up the phone or email and ask. The worst you can hear is no. It's not a crushing blow if they say no. It just means you have to regroup. It's not a rejection of you. It's it's the realities of running a business. But and even if you don't feel equal to maybe proposing a session, if a conference is coming near you and you have a new book coming out, ask your publisher if they will host a signing for you. You don't have to present, you just sign. And you wander the exhibit hall and make as many connections as you can. At least ask that.
Well, and if you are a newer author who doesn't have a book out yet, but you're aspiring, and one of these conferences is in your backyard, it may be worth it to get an exhibit hall pass for a day just to kind of get a sense
Hmm?
of what's out there, right? To
Right,
be able to see what kind of presentations are in the book, and to kind of see what happens on the exhibit hall floor. And that way, when you do get a book published and you want to have a proposal, now you have a little bit more information.
right, right, exactly. And an exhibit hall pass, just to clarify, just will get you access to the exhibit hall. It won't allow you access
Right.
to the sessions. But maybe you don't need to go to the sessions. Maybe just looking at the agenda is enough to
Yeah.
just see what kind of titles and descriptions are being accepted for that particular conference. Well, here's another idea. I am attending a conference in Lafayette, Louisiana in a week or so called the National Marine Educators Association. Very small organization, smaller, much smaller conferences, but these are marine educators. I have 6 water books, people. These are my peeps, right? So why not apply to this conference? I've never spoken at it before. I really don't know what to expect, but I submitted a proposal. They liked it, they accepted it. And one of my books, Giant Rays of Hope, is about a National Marine Educator Association member. So it's a connection already, and I haven't even set foot in the door. So I'm looking forward to it. And my husband and I are going together. We're making a little vacation out of it because we've never explored that part of Louisiana. So it's sort of a vacation that can be deducted. Okay.
And
Part of it.
sometimes and sometimes those smaller conferences, when you go to the American Library Association, you are one author among hundreds,
Right.
maybe even thousands of authors. And there are big best-selling names there.
Hmm.
If you go to a smaller conference that's more specialized, or a more regional conference, like we're Patty and I both are in California. There's a California Reading Association
I think that's where you
conference.
and I first met.
Yeah, we did. And so most states have like a state level reading association
Hmm.
conference. So
Hmm.
sometimes at these smaller conferences or less popular conferences, you're now, one of a handful of authors.
They're a big fish in a smaller pond, yeah. And
Yeah.
also, we should say that International Literacy Association has many local chapters, like the California Reading Association. Find the Reading Association in your area. The American Library Association has many smaller chapters, like California School Library Association, like Virginia Library Association. Find the ALA chapter in your area, and they also have meetings and conferences and opportunities for presenting.
Yeah, I agree. And so sometimes those targeted things can be really helpful.
Right.
And to your
Also, they're less expensive because your travel costs aren't won't be as high.
Yeah, and the registration fees.
Right.
But to your point about, making conferences do double duty, whenever I choose a conference, I'm also prepared that if I have to pay out of pocket for my travel and I don't get any other reimbursement,
Hmm.
I make sure that I'm committed for that. So for example, I'm going to Denver. I will see you in Denver.
Hmm.
But I have family there. And so I'm like, you know what? If my publisher doesn't cover travel, I'm sure I'm probably will get registration, but if they don't cover travel, in my mind, that's an opportunity to see my mother-in-law
Right.
and catch up with some family. So I'm okay, I'm okay with that. And the portion that's associated with the conference is deductible.
Deductible,
Yeah.
yes. So your flight there and back is deductible,
Right.
all of it,
Right.
because you have to get to the conference and back. If
Either
you
way.
book a hotel, the nights you need around your specific business are deductible, but the
Right.
rest of it isn't. Your meals those days are deductible.
Right.
So a large part of it you can claim on your taxes, but you have to be a good record keeper too.
Yes. Definitely. Yes. Save those receipts. I have like an accordion file, right? And I, I put all the, I have a month, each month has its own label and put all
Yep,
the receipts in. Yeah.
yep. Yeah, it's not fun, people, but it's necessary.
Any other tips? Any other final thoughts? Anything you think that I have neglected to cover on the topic of presentations, proposals, and these conferences?
No, I would just encourage writers out there to use their imaginations. I know you all have great imaginations. You're writers. So use your imaginations, and usually what wows you will wow someone else too. You just have to figure out how to tweak it, how to spin it, how to market it, to put it in the language that educators and librarians can grab hold of and will be useful to them in their jobs.
Yeah, I agree. And, if you have, you mentioned educator guides. If you have an educator guide, you're already kind of learning how to speak in their language, right? So
Yeah,
thinking through like, here are the things that they are trying to present to their students, so how can you help them make that happen?
right.
Yeah.
Right. Oftentimes, the activities that I bring to presentations come right from my educator guides.
Yeah. So and again, it's kind of like double duty.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, these presentations take a lot of time to propose, and if you're accepted, to plan and to execute. So you have to streamline things wherever you can, but always focus on making the clearest, I don't know, useful argument that you can for each of your presentations.
All right. So, Patty, I know you probably have future books on the horizon. Is there any book news that you can share about things we should look for in the future?
Yes, I do have one book coming out in February 2026. It's called Beatrice and the Nightingale. For a change, it's not about water, so I know people will be surprised. But it is about an English cellist who came from an eccentric family of musicians, eccentric and marvelous. Beatrice was extra special because she was famous kind of during the period before World War One and up through World War Two and after. She died in 1965. One day when she was practicing in her garden with the pet canaries and the pet donkey and the pet dogs and all this stuff happening, she was practicing her cello and a nightingale started to sing with her. And she thought it was just marvelous. So she played with that bird so many nights, and then she realized that the BBC should record this. She
Oh,
had just done a an on-air musical program for the BBC, and it gave her the idea that the BBC should record this. Radio was brand new then. So, think back. Radio's brand new. We don't have earbuds. We don't have streaming music. We don't even have albums yet, right? So, people used to go hear their music in concert halls. So she approaches the BBC. They think she's, rather touched. She finally convinces them. They drag out all their equipment to her garden. She's sitting there kind of crooked with her chair somewhat in a ditch to be close to the nightingale that's in the bushes. You know, they hide in bushes. And she plays and plays and plays. And finally, the nightingale sings to her, with her. And it's broadcast all over the world. You know, people in Japan and Canada and Australia and Scandinavia, they're all listening to this. She receives thousands of letters. The whole deal is repeated the next week and then for the next 12 years. And it was just the perfect combination of music and technology and natural science coming together in one very brief moment that people remembered forever.
Wow. All right. And you said that's coming out in February?
February 2006, Beatrice and the Nightingale. It's coming out with Peachtree Publishers.
All right. So everybody stay tuned for that one. Patty, it has been my absolute delight to speak with you. Thank you for sharing so much of your knowledge with us.
Oh, thank you. Let me know if you guys have questions. You know, I'm online and you can reach me.
Yeah. So, where can our listeners find you online? If you wouldn't mind sharing your website and anywhere else we should connect with you.
I'm on the web at patriciamnewman.com. patriciamnewman.com. And I'm also on Twitter at Patricia Newman. I'm on Blue Sky at Patricia Newman. Instagram at Patricia Newman Books. So you'll find me.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, I appreciate it, Patty. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's been a real pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you for listening. To get the full transcript of this podcast, sign up for my newsletter at kirstenwlarson.com. It will be sent out with the next mailing. All backlist episodes are available via the Nonfiction Kidlit Craft Conversations page on my website. You can watch on YouTube or listen wherever you get your podcasts. Are you enjoying the podcast? Please consider leaving a rating and review to help more nonfiction lovers discover it. Join me next time when I speak to Colleen Pack, author of Firefly Song, illustrated by Ji-Hyuk Kim. We will be discussing the fine line between nonfiction and informational fiction and what might prompt us to choose one form over the other. See you next time.